So today we're going to pick up where we left off. Basically, we've gotten to the point where we have a drawing that's laid out in paper space in AutoCAD, and we're going to export that drawing to PDF via the plot function. Once we have it as a PDF document, it's nice to kind of make some touch-ups to it. And this is really for the presentation of your work, and it's designed for the big boards that go on the back of the wall that you're going to try to showcase your work. And these touch-ups are not something that you do typically in a workflow in an office where you're doing production drawings for, say, construction documents or something like that. If you're doing construction documents, they're going to come right out of AutoCAD, probably as a sheet set, and you're going to have a bunch of straight AutoCAD drawings that you're going to submit to the county for permitting or whatever. But for our purposes, really, a lot of this class is about representation of ideas, and consequently, it makes sense to take your AutoCAD file and do some post-processing to it to make it look a little bit better, to make it read better on a wall down the road. So today I'm going to show you a variety of techniques that are done in Illustrator to kind of enhance your drawings and push what they look like once they get onto the wall. And I'll walk through a variety of steps to do that. This is something that works certainly out of AutoCAD. It's also something that if you continue on in the series and you take 136, which I hope that you do, we'll take Rhino drawings and bring them back into Illustrator and do some post-processing. So it's not unique to AutoCAD. It's something that is really part of a workflow, and it's good to have some mastery of Illustrator in this context. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through this. I have the same drawing that I had last class ready to go. And you can use the drawing that you created last class, the PDF, or you can print a new one. I'm going to go ahead, for the sake of practice, I'm going to go ahead and plot a new drawing. And so I'll click on the little plotter icon. It'll bring up all the same settings that we had from last time. The good news is these are all set in the layout of Paperspace, so we don't have to worry about anything. We could just say OK. And it's going to ask me, where do I want to save my PDF? So let's change the name here. We're on 123, and this is the spring of 2017. And let me go ahead and put it on my OneDrive here into today's folder, which is 123. There it is. And I'll go ahead and click on Save. And it'll then plot the drawing. And by default, the drawing, once it's plotted, will open up in Adobe Acrobat, so you could see a preview of it. We don't really care about the Acrobat version, so we'll go ahead and close the Acrobat version. What we do care about is opening it in Adobe Illustrator. So I already have Illustrator open. You'll want to open Illustrator, and then you can go to File and then Open, and you're going to go find that drawing that we just saved. So it was in folder 123 here, and it was our spring of 2017 version. And I'll go ahead and say Open. If I press Control-0, I can see the whole screen. And lo and behold, this looks exactly like the Paperspace that we created in AutoCAD, except now we have it opened in Illustrator. And if I look at this drawing, one of the great things about this is rather than exporting a JPEG, where we have just a black and white drawing, these actually are all live lines. So I can go in and I could select any individual line and make adjustments to it. So for example, if I felt after the fact that my ground wasn't thick enough, I could go through, hold down Shift, and select all of the ground lines here. And I could go back to my stroke, and I could adjust the stroke weight up a bit. And now I have nice, strong ground lines. So the point is that by using the plot function in Paperspace, creating a PDF, this PDF actually has live lines. We can go back in and we can edit, which is really good for post-processing in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to go ahead and go through a variety of other steps. Notice that we could also take any one of these lines and we could apply a brush stroke to it. So for example, if I opened up a brush, open brush library, let me open up the artistic ink brushes here, and I could put a brush stroke on it if I wanted instead. So you've got a lot of flexibility here. Let me undo that, Control-Z. And now what I want to do is I want to do some collage work over the top of these images. And I'll show you some different strategies for doing this collage work. But this is a standard practice to kind of enhance and make your drawings pop just a little bit. So before I really get into this, I always recommend that we go to the layers and we take a look at what's happening here. So under layer 1, I have 5 clip groups. Those 5 clip groups represent the 5 drawing viewports that I had. So I have the plan, and I have each of the 4 elevations represented as clip groups. Before I really move on, I'm going to go ahead and rename layer 1 to be AutoCAD Base Drawing. That way I know that I can come back to that layer. And before I start manipulating anything, I'm going to make a duplicate of this layer. So let me click the little flyout menu here, and I'm going to say Duplicate AutoCAD Base Drawing. There it is. And we'll rename this to be Working Lines or something like that. I try to work on naming my layers so that I know what's on each layer. It helps kind of clarify things. So let me go ahead and lock the AutoCAD Base Drawing and turn it off so that I can't mess with it. I can always come back. The advantage of having a duplicate layer is if you screw something up, you still have your original. So you can always go back to it. You can make a new duplicate of it and keep working. So I'm going to work on the working lines layer. And I want to release each of these clip groups, because right now, as a clip group, we're going to have trouble really working with the drawings. So if I highlight the clip group here, I can come up to my little flyout menu, and I can say Release Clipping Mask, and it becomes just a regular group. You don't have to do this, but it helps to do this. So let me go ahead and release it for each layer. And now I have just basic groups, which works out just fine for what we're trying to do. So at this point, I'm going to concentrate for a second on just the plan. So let me zoom in. I'll press Control+ a couple times. I'll hold down spacebar to pan so that I can see my floor plan right there. So I'm going to start working with the floor plan. I'm going to be on the working lines layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a live paint of this. And you guys may have done this in the Charlie Harper. You may not have done it. If you haven't done it yet, today's the day where you get to work with a live paint. And what I'll do is I'll select, let me zoom out one step here. I'm going to select all of the lines that are part of my floor plan there. And I'm going to come over to the Live Paint tool, which is underneath the Shape Builder tool. It's right there, Live Paint bucket. I could also press K on the keyboard as a shortcut. And when I move over this selection, it says click to make a live paint group. So I want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the drawing. And this will then allow me to fill in parts of my drawing. So let me specify, before I start filling, a color. And I usually pick bold colors so that it's easy to see what I filled in. We're going to change the colors afterward. So I'm going to fill in the floors. So let's go ahead and fill this in. Fill this in. Oh, for some reason, it's in grayscale. Let's convert to RGB. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in all of the floor. And there we go. So I have all the floor filled in. Then I'm going to change my color to a different color. And I'm going to fill in the walls. Now, it's possible that you did a hatch for the walls, in which case you wouldn't need to do this. But for me, in this particular context, I didn't do a hatch. So let me zoom in a little bit so I can see. Got a couple more little pieces to fill in here. Couple more. OK, so now I have both of those regions filled in. And when I'm done with all of my live paints, and again, I try to do them all at once if I can, I'm going to go ahead and click on this Expand button up here at the top ribbon. And what the Expand button does is it makes actual objects out of my live paint group. And so when I click on expand, I can then use the direct select tool, the white arrow. Let me click off. And I can select each of these objects. So there I've selected that piece of the floor. And ultimately, I'm going to change all of those objects. But before I do that, it's helpful to put all of them on their own layer so that we can work with the layer as a whole. So I could go through, hold down Shift, and I could select each of the red objects. But I could also go up to the Select menu and choose Select Same Fill Color. And I'd select all the red. That's why I paint them in different colors, because it makes selecting them really easy. So let me go to Layers, and let me create a brand new layer. And we're going to call this brand new layer Floor. And I'm going to move all of those objects that I just selected, the red objects, onto the floor layer. And I'll do that by dragging this little box up to the floor layer. And now I can turn those off, and we can confirm that they were, in fact, all on the floors layer. Let me go ahead and do the same thing with the walls layer. Let me select one of them, and I'll do Select Same Fill Color. Oops, let me zoom in a little bit here. There we go. Select Same Fill Color. There we go. And let me create a new layer, and we're going to call this layer Walls. And I'm going to move those objects up onto the walls layer. There we go, and then we'll turn them off. So now I'm back to where I have my floor plan. We could actually turn off the floor plan altogether, and we can see that I have the floors of my building, and I also have the walls of my building. So now I can manipulate each of those in different ways. So let's start with the floors for just a second. Let's say that I wanted to do something relatively simple. It might be as simple as selecting the objects, changing the color to be some nice shade of gray. Let's do maybe 0, 0, 0, and maybe 30% gray, something like that. Okay, so that just gives a little tone for the building. On the walls layer, I might select it, make it a little bit darker. So, by the way, I selected all the objects on the given layer by selecting the layer and then clicking the little box at the end to select all the objects. And then I could make these a little bit stronger. Let's go 0, 0, 0, 60. Now those are a 60% gray. And I can take the floors and the walls and I can put them below every other layer. And I can turn on my line drawings. Oops. Floors. And you can see that it's starting to stand out a little bit more. So it's subtle. It's not too much. I could take this a step further by, instead of applying just a color to the region, maybe I want to apply a little bit of a marker texture or something. And if you guys remember back to our diagrams lecture, under the Resources tab, if you go to Swatches, there are some Prismacolor Markers. So I'm going to download this Prismacolor Markers. I actually already have it on my flash drive. But this particular one, if it loads, come on, has some kind of streaks to it. So it makes it a little bit more modeled as if you colored it in by hand. There we go. And so if I download these, I'm going to load this as a swatch set. I happen to already have it on my flash drive, so I don't need to download it. I'm going to go to Swatches. I'm going to click on the little flyout. I'll go to Open Swatch Library, Other Library. And I need to go find it. It's on my flash drive, or in this case, my OneDrive, under my Resources. It's under Illustrator, and it's under Swatches, and there's the markers. So there they are. And so now what I can do is I could go back. I could select all of my floors. There they are. And I could apply one of my markers. If I did the darker marker, now you can't see it. I'm picking one that hopefully you can see. There you go. See how it has the streaks to it? I wouldn't actually pick my floor to be this kind of ugly army green color, but I'm doing that so that you guys can see that it has the streaks. It makes it a little less formal than applying just a plain color. But it's again, it's a strategy. So I might use kind of a light color, something like that. You guys can't see the streaks. I can see the streaks here. And then I might select all of the walls. And then I'll use something a little bit darker for the walls, maybe this one. And so now if I back out, Control-0, you can see that that floor plan is starting to read well. And again, one of the advantages of doing this kind of post-processing is this floor plan is going to read on the wall When you're looking at it really close, you can see the details of it, etc. But when you're looking at it far away on the wall, you can still read the floor plan. It still stands out. Do you guys see how that works? Remember when we were talking about the graphic design section of the class, that 12-6-3-1 rule, where if we're 12 feet away, can we still see something? And if we're 1 foot away, do we still see some detail that's new and interesting? So it's important to keep that in mind when we start to do this post-processing. The other thing that we can do to a particular region is that we can apply some kind of a grunge texture behind it, which sometimes is an advantage. And I'm going to show you how to do that too, and then we'll move on a little bit more. This, by the way, is written out. Oh, actually, all of this stuff. If you go into the Illustrator tutorials, we're working right now in the background texture and the custom background texture. So they are here if you want to go back and kind of review how this process works. So go back here to Illustrator. I'm going to apply a grunge texture behind this. By a grunge texture, if you do a Google search for a grunge texture, basically it's something dirty. It's something like this. Something dirty, kind of splotchy, and it makes your drawing a little bit less rigid. And one of the things that happens in computer graphics is we end up having very rigid lines, colors, they're very uniform. Something like this makes it almost as if you drew it a little bit by hand. It adds a little hand quality to it. You guys, by the way, you guys are familiar with Pixar, right? You know Pixar movies like Toy Story and that sort of thing? Okay. Do you know that there are people that work at Pixar whose job it is to make things dirty? That's their purpose. Okay, so when they do animations, things look too clean in a computer context. They need a way of making them kind of real and dirty. So we're doing the same thing here with one of these background textures. I already have a bunch that have been downloaded to my flash drive, but any one of these would work just fine for the purposes of what we're doing today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, work with just my floors layer. So let's turn everything else off so we're seeing just the floors. And with the floors layer, I'll go ahead and select my objects there so that we can kind of see that they are. If I go to the opacity menu, right here, what I essentially want is I want to apply a mask to this opacity menu that has some of this grunge texture to it. So with my object selected, I'm going to click on the Make Mask button right here. And again, this is under Transparency. I'll click on Make Mask. It gives me this little two-colored thing. On the black and white version, right there, if I click on it, I'm then going to go to File and Place, and I'm going to drop in one of those grunge textures. So let me go to my flash drive here, and let me go to Resources. Notice I have a folder for grunge textures. There they are. And we'll drop something that is a grunge texture in. And you can see that when I move the grunge texture over my drawing here, make it a little bit bigger, right? It works over this particular drawing. Let me go back here. Looks like I missed one of my little shapes here. Hold on a second. Let me back out for just a second. Something happened and they didn't all apply correctly. Before I do this, let me go ahead and go up to Objects, Compound Path, Make, so that it becomes one shape instead of multiple shapes. And let me do this one more time. I'll click on Make Mask, and then I'll go to File. Oops, sorry, I have to move into the Mask section here. I'll go to File and then Place. I'll pick a grunge texture. Let's see if I can. I want one that's going to show better for you guys. Here we go. Right, so there it is. This one's obviously large enough. Oh, you guys can't see that, can you? Let me see if I can get one that's darker. Sorry. You guys can't see it, can you? At all. All right, hold on. Let me see if I can get one that you guys can see. Gotta love the projector, right? Yeah. Well, you guys are going to have to trust me that it's there. Sorry. It essentially it breaks down your texture so that it's not so stark. Let me see if I can just duplicate this layer a little bit. Oh, wait. So one of the things that does happen when you're working in here is sometimes you get stuck in the opacity mask. Make sure you click back to your drawing itself. Once you're back in your drawing, then you can go back and see your layers, and you'll see them all. Let me see if I can duplicate this layer enough for you to see it. There you go. You're starting to see it now. One more duplication and you'll probably see it. Sorry that it's difficult, but you can see that the little spots and the background texture gives it a realistic quality to it, and a little bit of coloring. So if I take that and I turn back on my drawings and I turn back on my walls, we can start to have that kind of background texture. Obviously, I way over darkened this so you can see it. It works better if it's subtle, and so in my final version, I would probably turn these off and have it a little bit lighter so it's not so strong. Okay? But again, I wanted you to see it. So now this is kind of that whole process was a very generic, you're not applying any photographs, you're just kind of slightly toning your particular building. I could do the same thing with one of my elevations and slightly tone it, but I'm going to show you how to drop a photographic background behind it instead. So let's zoom in on this elevation right here, which is a combination of a concrete wall and some windows. And I'm going to work through the same process. So let me go to my layers. I'm going to turn back on my working lines. That's the one I'm going to work on. We can turn all the rest of this off. And I'm going to select this elevation. I don't need both of them. I just need this top elevation. There it is. And I'm going to go back to my live paint bucket. And I'm going to paint with a color. So I'll pick a blue for right now. I'll click to make live paint, and then I'm going to click inside of all of these windows. Okay, so I have all the windows selected right now. Before I move on, I'm going to do a couple other things. Let's pick a different color. And I'm going to do the concrete. And then I also had a section that was wood. I'm not sure that I'm actually going to do anything with the wood just yet, but since I'm here, it's easier to make the selections while I'm still in the same live paint. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I now have all the different regions colored in. I'm going to click on the expand button up here at my top ribbon, which again makes these all individual objects. I'll use the direct select tool, the white arrow, and I'll select one of these green. There it is. I'll go up to the select menu, select same fill color. Now I have all the greens. And let's go ahead and make a new layer for them. So this is elevation. And I'm going to move those objects onto the concrete elevation layer. Now if I turn them off, they go away. Do the same thing with the windows. Select same fill color. New layer. This is elevation windows. I'm going to move those windows onto the elevation windows layer. There they are. Turn them off. And the last thing was the wood window frames. So I'll zoom in a bit because it's harder to select these. And then select same fill color. I have them. And a new layer. And this is going to be the elevation window frames. And we'll move those onto that layer as well. So now if I were to turn off my working lines, press Control minus to zoom out. Let's turn just the windows on for right now. So in the same vein as what I just did, I could simply take the windows and select them all. And I could find a nice color of blue to represent the windows, maybe a little bit lighter blue, something like that. And I could then turn back on my drawings, and we'd see, OK, that represents the windows. The other strategy, though, is to drop a photographic background behind, some kind of a sky texture with clouds to represent the windows. A lot of times that works nicely. So the first thing I need to do is I need to go find some sky images. So if I do a Creative Commons search, search.creativecommons.org, we're going to use Flickr, and we're going to search for cloudy sky. And maybe if the internet would work, we'd have an example. And we kind of need to look through a variety of different pieces, depending on the look that we're going for. Obviously, you could pick a sunset style. But something like this, with just kind of a basic cloudy sky, would work quite nicely. So let me go ahead and download this image in its original size. And let me show it as soon as it's done downloading here. And let me copy it and put it into today's folder. Oops, sorry, wrong folder here. And we'll go ahead and paste it right here so that I can use it. So now let me go back to Illustrator. Let me turn off everything except the windows. Now, in order to do this, what's called a clipping mask of these objects. By the way, this also is written out and referenced. If you go to Tutorials, Illustrator, it's going to be complex, or here we go, clipping mask from Live Paint. This one will do absolutely everything. There's actually a video tutorial. It'll do everything, walk you through everything that I'm doing. Okay, so if you get lost, you can go look at that one as well. So essentially, I have all of these objects that I've done with a Live Paint. I want them all to become one object. So if we looked at the elevation windows layer, see how there's a bunch of individual paths? That's going to be a problem when I do the clipping mask. So let's go ahead and select all the objects there. And I'm going to go to Object, Compound Path, Make. Now watch what happens to the layer when I do this. All those individual paths become one compound path. That's the idea. So we have the Windows layer. We have a compound path. Now I need the photograph of the clouds. So let me go to File and then Place. And let me go to today's folder here. And of course, I don't remember which one it is. We'll guess. OK, that works. Obviously, significantly larger than I really need it to be. So we can use our free transform tool, and I can make it a little bit smaller. I'm holding down Shift to keep it in relative proportion. Something like that. Now, as I look at the layer, I have to make sure that there's a very specific order. The linked file has to come below the compound path. So I'm just going to drag the compound path on top of the linked file. There. Now we can see the windows on top of the background image. It also helps because I can make this a little bit smaller because I know how large this really needs to be. There we go, like that. Let me zoom in a bit. So compound path on top of linked file. When that is in that order, I'm going to select the main layer itself, go up to the flyout menu, and say Make Clipping Mask. And when I do that, it cuts out the background image for all of my little windows. It's probably a little bit strong if I were to turn back on. Well, number one, I have to move this below the lines. But if I were to turn back on my lines, those are probably a little bit strong still. So I would take my windows, I would go to my opacity here, and I'd probably drop my opacity down to maybe 40%. Well, you can't see it. For me, for actual version, I would probably do 40%. For you guys, so you can see it, I might go to 70%. So I'm just dropping it down so it's not quite as strong. I can do the same thing again with the walls themselves. So let me come back to my layers. I'm going to turn off these two, and I'm going to work with my concrete elevation there. And in this one, I need some concrete as a background texture. So let's go online and see if we can find concrete. Boy, the internet's slow today. Let me try Google Image to see if it works a little bit better. All right, so there we go. So I could pick something, one of these kinds of textures, but really it would be nice to have something that's a little bit more like this. And so I'll go ahead and let me go ahead and view this image. There it is. Let me save this image as, and we'll drop it to my flash drive under today's folder. There we go. And now I'll go back to Illustrator, and I'm going to go ahead and once again, I have to select all of the paths. So it looks like I have a compound path this time and then a bunch of other paths. The good news is that's fine. I can select them all and still go Object, Compound Path, Make, and it'll make it one compound path. So again, it has to be like that. Now we can go to File and then Place. And I'm going to drop in that concrete. And it would have been helpful for me to know which one it actually is. It ends in a B. Okay, let's see here. There it is. And I'll place. There's that concrete. So it's too big for the scale of what I'm trying to do. Let me Control minus, and then we'll shrink this down until it feels like it's about the right size. And we'll drop it on my building. Now in this case, I need more than one of these. So I can Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and we can line that up. Remember, we have the align tools that are available to us. So if we get close, we could then select all three of these, go to Window, and then Align. Looks like I already have Align open here. There it is. Let me align to the top, and I could distribute the objects so that they're next to each other like that. There are all three. We go back to my layers. Remember, the compound path has to be on top of the linked file. They can be three individual linked files, that's fine, but the compound path has to be on top. I'll make sure the main layer is selected. I'll go to the little flyout menu and say Make Clipping Mask, and it'll then clip out for the concrete. So let me go ahead and move this concrete below, again, the base drawing. We can turn on the base drawing. We can turn on my windows. And we're starting to see this as a textured, colored elevation. So it's always important to kind of realize when you're doing this. Obviously, I'm doing it multiple times, and I'm showing you, oh, you can add this and you can add this. Spend some time editing and think about what really looks good versus doing it for everything. It's always tempting to say, oh, well, I can collage all this stuff in, and I can do everything all at once. That doesn't always look the best. So think about maybe just having the windows show is all you need. Maybe just having some of the colors like that matters. And you want to do it all as kind of this grayscale. So you just want to think through what really is working and what looks best for you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn back on the concrete here. I'm going to leave it kind of in this grayscale for right now. I'm going to leave the windows off for right now. Now it's a matter of kind of making this complete. And typically the next piece of the puzzle is adding text. putting some labels on. You know, if I know that this particular piece of the drawing is my north elevation, it's my north. This is my south, that is my north. If I know this is my north, the temptation is, text. Let me make a new layer for my text here. We'll put that at the top. The temptation is text. All right, let me lock these other layers so that I can't accidentally select them. All right, north elevation. Okay. Well, that's really small. Let me get this so that I can see it. Perfect. Okay. So now I have this on my drawing. North elevation, whatever. Okay. Imagine me printing this out, 24 by 36. How tall is that north elevation now? It's like an inch tall, maybe 2 inches tall. It's way too big to go on a wall. And this is what always happens, guaranteed. People put the text in because on the computer, the text looks too small. The text doesn't need to be more than about 14 point max. So you have two options. If you're really, really obsessed with having big text, then you have to make it part of the drawing. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But if not, take your text and make sure that that size is somewhere like 14 point, 16 point, something like that. That is most definitely all you need. It looks really small when you're looking at it here. But if you imagine it printed out on the wall, this is appropriate. Does that make sense? So just this is the big caution. I'm trying to tell you this right now because you will make this mistake in 220 if you don't think about it. So the other option would be, I'll do this for the south elevation, is that you make it part of the drawing itself. So let me use my pen tool, and I'm going to add on to this ground plane here. I'm going to come down. We'll go over, and I'll come back up like that. And then I'm going to make sure that this isn't quite so stark. So let me drop down and make it a little bit of a gray, something like that. OK, so you see I have this. This really should be behind my object. But now I'll go ahead and type in, this was the south elevation, so I'll say south. I could do elevation. Let me select this. And in this case, having a little bit of a large text isn't necessarily a bad thing. Well, maybe even a little larger. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this text right over this object. I'll make sure that it aligns so that it's at the bottom. I might even have it overlap just a little bit like that. Then I will take this object. I'll go to Type, Create Outlines, which makes the outlines of the object. We've done that before, only in InDesign. It works the same way. I'll take this, and I'll select that gray object that I just created. And remember, we used that Pathfinder tool before. If I go to Window, Pathfinder, I can use the Pathfinder tool to subtract the text from the elevation. So when you do something like this, the words south elevation become part of the ground and the weight of the building. So in this case, having it large doesn't matter because it's part of the graphics of the way you're representing it. That's very different than having just really, really large text. Taking this and, say, making it 60 point. Do you guys see how those are very different? This is part of the drawing. This is just way too large a text. So either make this small, like that, or integrate it into the overall drawing itself. I should change this to be down on one of these lower layers here. Oh, I have to unlock it first. Just so that it's behind the line at the top. So those are different options for you. The other thing that you have to think about, obviously, is font choice. Generally, a simple plain font makes sense. If you're doing something that needs to feel a little bit more architectural, there are some architectural fonts that you can download. Frank the Architect, the font is free for its basic version. And it has a paid version. The basic version just doesn't have bold and italics and stuff like that. But it's very much a typical architectural font. You can download this. I showed you guys how to temporarily install it on the computer. You can use this as a font, and it will look architectural in its context. For school, a lot of times just picking a very plain Arial or something works really nice. It's simple, it's clean, and it won't distract from the drawing itself. Okay? The other thing that can be useful is to put graphic bar scales on your drawing. And I have some example graphic bar scales that you can download on the course website. If you go to Resources, Downloadable Resource Packages, we're in Archie 135. Notice I have grunge textures there. You can download some sample grunge textures. And as we come down here, zip of title blocks, graphic bar scales, and notes. If you right-click and say Save Link As, you can download this zip file. I already have it downloaded, so I'm not going to worry about it. And what I can do is I can then go and place those directly in my drawing. So if I go to File and then Place, I can go find that zip file. Actually, it's already extracted. You do have to extract it. It would be under Resources, Illustrator, and then we can look under, I think it's under Title Blocks. Here we go, Drawing Scale. I have two types. I have a clean and I have a casual. We can see the little preview here as to which one looks. This one is a little bit more, architectural with the lines that go along, etc. I need to know what my scale is, so I'd be at a quarter scale, and so I have to pick that one. There it is, or I could pick the clean one. I'll do both. Here's the quarter scale casual. There it is, and I'll go ahead and place. Crop to media is fine. I'll go ahead and say OK, and that then shows up. Let me zoom in here a little bit. As a little graphic bar scale that represents. Pretty easy to drop it in. The other option would be to use one of the clean ones. So I'll go to File and then Place. And I could use the clean quarter scale. Looks like I had two different options here. Let me place this one in. It's a little bit longer, but it works the same way. Like that. The nice thing about a graphic bar scale is you can really easily see how big is the drawing. And even if you make a copy of it and you say scale to fit and it shrinks a little bit and you don't actually use a scale, you can still see the general size. That's why we like graphic bar scales. So I've put those in as part of my drawings. I've labeled, etc. Now maybe I want a title block to go around my drawing. I have that as well. If I go to File and then Place, there's a couple title blocks. Looks like they're all the casual. You'd be using the 24 by 36. I can then place it. I can say OK. And there it is. This particular one goes around your drawing and has a small little block in the corner. If I want to edit this, the font is currently that Frank the Architect font. If I go in and I edit it, let me double click on it, see if I can get into it. So in order to edit it, I have to click this Embed button, which makes it no longer a linked file. Notice that Frank the Architect is missing. It's going to substitute. So there's the substitute of font. But I could go in and then I can click on this, and this would be what? Yosemite Cabin. And I could put, client name, etc. You get the idea. This would be not sheet 7, it would be sheet 1 of 1. You get the idea. Okay? So in this context, I now have a title block that goes around my page. I have to back out of my clip group to get back to my drawing, and I have that little title block that goes around the page. You could obviously have different ones. I should upload some clean ones so that if you don't like this style, you could go with a basic clean one. And now it looks like a finished drawing. Now typically when you're doing presentation drawings, you very rarely do the actual title block. Right? Most of the time you might just put your name and stuff in the corner and print it out without a title block. Title blocks are something that happens a lot in firms and in practice because it's a way of identifying this is one sheet. Okay? But it's part of a sheet set rather than something that's going on the wall. All right? So there's a little bit of flexibility there. So what I want you to do today is I want you to experiment with these techniques. Remember today there's no right and wrong answer. If something ends up not looking that good or you do too much, no big deal. This is about experimentation. This is, of course, pushing you toward your assignment 105 that's going to be due. On your assignment 105, do make sure you think about what looks good and edit. Don't just do it for everything. Okay? If you don't like the windows, if it doesn't look right, don't do it. If you don't like the title block and it doesn't look right, don't do it. You get the idea. So when I'm done with all of this, I'm going to save my work. So I'll go to File and then Save. And it saves right as that PDF. So that's the cool thing about working with the PDF in Illustrator, is that it saves it as the PDF. I can then go find it on my flash drive. And, whoops. There it is. And if I double click it, it's not going to open in Illustrator. Remember, it's going to open in Acrobat, which is exactly what I want. Now, for part of your assignment 105, you're not going to do this as part of today, but I'm telling you this going forward. Once your assignment 105 is done, you need to plot this. And so you have two different options. If you use one of the back 6 computers on that row, you can plot directly to the plotter that's sitting in the back, but you have to plug in the USB to do it. Okay? That is free. You don't have to pay your 25 cents. If you do it from one of the other computers, you're then going to have to send it to the lab in the other room. It's entirely possible one or the other of the plotters will break, run out of ink, run out of paper during the course of you guys doing this plotting. So recognize there are 2, and you can plot to either one. The only difference is that one costs 25 cents and that one's free. The truth is 25 cents is absolutely nothing to pay for a plot. It's really cheap. If you go to Kinko's and have this printed at Kinko's, this 24 by 36 page in color could cost you 40 bucks. So 25 cents is a good deal. Free is even better. Anyway, you get the idea. So when we go to print, I want it in Acrobat. I'm going to click on the little printer icon here, and it's going to bring up the print icon. I'm going to choose the T520C. That's the one I'm looking for. Okay? If you're printing from one of the computers to go to that one, it's going to say Go Print T520C. If you print from one of the 6 in the back, it will be just listed as the T520C as one of the printers down here. It won't say Go Print in front of it. Okay? So because I don't have that, I'm going to click on the T520C. The other thing that is notoriously usual for school computers is that things take time. So I pick the 520C and I wait for a while. And the hope is that it will eventually pick it. The other thing that you can do if it's not printing from this lab, if you go to the lab that's in 116, for whatever reason, that tends to work a little bit better when you pick it. But again, it's a PDF, so it doesn't really matter. So we're hoping that I can get to this. Tell you what, why don't you guys start working, and when this comes back, I'll unpause the recording and we'll continue. Okay, so after a ridiculously long wait, it did finally load the printer. It only took an hour. So when we get into actually the printing here, a couple things. One, we have to specify the page size to make sure that it matches up. Because right now it's trying to print on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper instead of a full-size sheet of paper. So first thing I'm going to do is under the page sizing and handling, I'm going to click on size. Maybe not. Oh, come on. All right, you know what? I'll do this from one of the back ones where it's not going to run quite so slow. And I'll show you guys next class or something, okay? Because you don't need to sit and watch this.